Superman was all about revising the outdated idea that a corny hero like that could never work, let alone be popular. Yet Gunn did the impossible and made that naive, good-natured characterization not just work conventionally, but made it punk rock. However, Supergirl, particularly Woman of Tomorrow, is all about reassuring the immovable fact that Superman is corny. Because yeah, that's kind of a roundabout punk rock, but this is punk rock. Welcome to Sandwich Reviews. I'm that sandwich guy, your nihilistic optimist, and the more time that goes on, with every new detail sprinkled out to the public, and especially now with the 2+ minutes of footage we got, I've realized just how excited I am to see this. And before breaking down what we saw in that footage, from the comic's general characters and ideas, to particular Easter eggs, and even possible story threads, I want to talk about the movie itself as it stands against the other DCU projects. Because Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, will either make or break this brand new DCU. Lanterns will release before this, scheduled for early 2026, whatever that means, and I have plenty to talk about there, so stay tuned for that. But with Women of Tomorrow being their second official theatrical outing, it's interesting that rather than diving into another area of this ever-expanding universe, Gunn and DC's other leaders have chosen to immediately upend the simplicity of Superman's central idea. Not disproving or going against that thesis of positivity and kindness, but illustrating how Clark's hokey sense of truth and justice is nothing more than a naive viewpoint of a simple farm boy who's too personally invested in every single conflict he comes across, stuck on helping individual branches from every individual tree, rather than seeing the utilitarian good that can be done for the whole forest. Of course, there's nothing wrong with being too kind or naive for your own good. Superman was all about how being that can better our lives. But I relate a lot of this to something I'm guessing a lot of you won't understand. Shout out to the My Hero Academia fans. Because Deku put it best that his idea of a hero was someone who, to do good, butts in where they don't belong. And I personally believe that to be true. So does Clark. Yet Kara doesn't. All because, as nice as it is to be overly compassionate, she understands that it is never as cut and dry as simply good versus evil. The actual intricacies of the real world involve so much more ambiguity than the open and shut nature of how Superman operates. And I'm not done discussing Kara's character, far from it, but it's finally time to talk about the trailer. And I'll get into the story in just a sec, more so when I'm discussing the comic story, but for now, let's just talk about those vibes. Because every small part behind each filmmaking choice supports the idea that Superman's hokey style and color will contrast heavily with Woman of Tomorrow's grungy aesthetic in all the right ways. But in that, her costume is perfect, even having the cool trench coat over top, straight from the comic. Yet the one thing that has me puzzled are the sunglasses. They kinda work, but I also can't help but think of Willy Wonka. Yet she also looks incredibly worn out. Hungover, yes, but more so just plain old at the end of her rope, which is the ideal place to start her adventure at. And in the trailer itself, we see tons of stuff, like a newspaper showing how Superman is still out there constantly saving lives, and to the side of it, a column on Supergirl saving some cats. Lots of incredible cinematography, awesome colorful sets, including some colorful laser sights, some space pirates, who are very Ravengers but are from the comic, and someone who looks to be Lobo, who's wearing some kind of collar with a red light, signifying to me that he's gonna be in prison somewhere, and Kara's going to inadvertently free him. I also appreciated the look of the spray paint stylized titles, hoping that's there for the movie itself, And I love the inspired music choice of Blondie's Call Me, not just because Kara's a blondie. But what I loved most is how insane the action is, showing some bombastic cosmic stuff and not shying away from fun filmmaking opportunities, rather than just deferring to what's worked in the past. And you know that's just the tip of the iceberg. We also see Argo City, and I'll dive into that in just a sec with comic spoilers. But in this, do you think we're gonna get Bradley Cooper and Angela Seraphine at all? I was sure they were cast for Woman of Tomorrow flashbacks in mind, but I'm probably wrong. But before diving headfirst into the comic, let's touch base with all of our characters. We've seen plenty of Kara and Krypto, a little bit of Ruthie, who I'm just gonna call Ruth, I guess Lobo for whatever the hell he's doing in this adaptation, and tons of expendable space pirates. So all we're really missing is Krem, but I'm sure we'll see more of him in later trailers. But moving on to the comic, I gotta say, this might be the most one-to-one comic book adaptation ever. Most of the time, the writers take a vague notion of the outline and construct a mirage of that. On occasion, it's not even that. Or they'll list off 3 or 4 stories that the writers are basing their characterizations and themes on. However, with Woman of Tomorrow, we're gonna get an extremely faithful depiction. I'm not talking shot for shot, though I wouldn't put it past them, but many shots and lines should be ripped straight from the pages, or else it would be wasted potential. But to really talk about that comic, I'm gonna give you the spoiler warning. Ready? Because this 8-part series, Woman of Tomorrow, originally released from 2021 to 22, just about nabbing an Eisner Award but losing to its stiff competition, has some of my favorite art out there. There's anything Alex Ross touches, anything Dan Mora touches, David Mack's surreal watercolor Daredevil and Echo art in Wake Up, Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man, Bruno Redondo's Nightwing, and near the top of that admittedly subjective list is Bilquis Evely's exquisitely detailed and textured art in Woman of Tomorrow, featuring some of the most jaw-dropping splash pages I've ever seen. Both King and Evely cited John Buscema and Gil Kane as their inspiration, but in particular, 70s European sci-fi books such as Mobius's Incal. And it's not that wild, but I do see what they were going for look and tone alike. And this being King's first foray into not wholly depressing stories. Mr. Miracle has a happy ending, but you know what I mean. Though it's still weird because Woman of Tomorrow is all about post-traumatic depression, but it has a constant undercurrent of fun, not giving the story tonal whiplash, but instead a much-needed distraction for Kara. That distraction being the adventure she undergoes to assist Ruth in her quest for revenge, hunting down Krem, an all-around simple asshole murderer. There's really not much to his character aside from being a dick, who of course killed Ruth's father, and because he also happened to shoot Krypto with an arrow, inciting the rage of every dog lover in sight, Kara happily agrees to come along. P.S. I was worried sick about Krypto the whole damn book, but Kara just reveals in the end that he's been fine the entire time. What, I said I was spoiling it? Don't worry, I'll give you another warning before I get to other stuff. But if you haven't read it, you should probably still dip out, because I'm about to talk about how Kara isn't the main character. Ruth is. And she's not only the narrator, but the one the story is all about. In fact, Kara is a side character in her story in the same way Max isn't the protagonist of Mad Max Fury Road. And I bring up Fury Road because in a twisted way, I think that's what the Woman of Tomorrow movie is going for. Hopping from one messed up world to the next, getting in exponentially worse situations until they finally reach their destination. And even Fury Road has its fair share of humor, all topped with a healthy amount of darkness, but Supergirl will undoubtedly have a much lighter tone, yet in my perfect world would have just as much sadism as George Miller's insane post-apocalyptic Australia. Because, getting back to the comic, Kara understands the good she's supposed to do all the time, like Clark does, but she struggles with actually doing that good, questioning whether her actions will result in a net positive or end up hurting someone in some way or another down the line like it always does. Because of that, Kara's more empathetic than Clark. She just buries that feeling down and bottles it up. And this is about to get real heavy. I might even have to censor some of the words. I don't know how lenient the YouTube gods are, but get ready. Because King himself explained it as if Superman was the hero born during the Holocaust, not actually remembering the horrific cruelty, and Supergirl is the one who lived in the Holocaust, knowing and living the pain, fear, and torture of it all, forever changed by it. And though I could end this video on that sad note, I simply must dive into even more comic spoilers, which most likely are also going to be movie spoilers. So despite me already ruining a whole heap of surprises for you, if you really haven't read Women of Tomorrow, I suggest pausing this and doing that. Don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. Ready? Okay. I'll start out with the reveal that everyone already knows. How in Woman of Tomorrow's penultimate chapter, it's shown how Argo City was catapulted into space when Krypton exploded, but radiation poisoning slowly killed everyone in much more horrific ways, and Kara was forced to watch as this all happened. This scene, of course, is a must. There's also some very necessary thematic stuff, like when Kara and Ruth wander upon someone being stoned to death, and Kara lets that person be killed to demonstrate how reserved she can be when it comes to actually saving lives. And I suppose it depends on if this has the same ending as the comic, but if it does, then the stoning scene is kinda a must as well. There's also a handful of fun self-contained chapters that probably will be cut, but would be so much fun to see, such as a Civil War planet with blue versus purple people, or the Kryptonian magic world Kara and Ruth are trapped in for a bit. Yet the one thing that I think would bum me out the most if it was cut is Comet. Now, the right choice would be to not include him at all, but if they're going to do it, go all the way. Give us Comet the Superhorse, and actually dive into his tragic origin of being a man cursed to be a superhorse for the rest of his life. Do you also kill him off like he is in the comic? I mean, yeah, let his entire story build up to that emotional moment. And if the filmmakers commit to a superhorse, then going even further and adapting the comic's ending would be picture perfect, where after a fun bit of unreliable narration, it seems like Kara straight up killed Krem, but rather imprisoned him in the Phantom Zone for his entire life. And the story picks back up with an old Ruth, who had been the one narrating the whole time, going to release Krem from his cage. And as Krem steps back onto non-Phantom Zone land, he breaks down, immediately begging for forgiveness. And seeing the genuine remorse he feels, Ruth decides to upend any emotional growth she's had and just beats Krem to death in the same way he beat her father to death. And in silhouette, Kara watches on, obviously very shocked at what's happening, but not stopping her. And once Ruth was done, they just walk in separate directions. I, for one, kinda love that ending, but I also know it's not for everyone, and a good narrative would have put a nice bow on it and shown how people are good and remorseful when given the chance to be. But in reality, or at least a grim reflection of reality that I sometimes enjoy seeing, people are also vengeful and violent when given the chance to be. And an ambiguous ending such as that can prop up discussions about the story's themes rather than just the themes themselves. Because when you think about it, the comic's overall theme, that evil is unknowable, unpredictable, and unbeatable, is still contradictory to that ending. Because Kara also believes that in most cases, it's still worth it to fight back against evil every step of the way. Because any minor change that can help has the chance to save someone's world. It's Tom King, so it's still gonna be depressing and about grief, but a glimmer of hope is always there. And that's the real punk rock Supergirl I want to see. But if nothing else, what Woman of Tomorrow's theatrical adaptation needs to get right is depicting how in its particular story, the universe is way bigger than just one person. In Superman stories, you genuinely feel like he's making a difference, because everything, even the villains, revolve around Superman. Yet in Woman of Tomorrow, you feel like this is a momentary speck within an indifferent universe. And for that reason, it feels much more lived in and expansive than a Superman book ever could be. So please, just get that right, or just some cool sci-fi stuff. But are you excited for Woman of Tomorrow? Did you not heed my warnings and I spoiled it all for you? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And as always, thanks for watching. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe for weekly video essays and reviews, and enjoy a delicious sandwich.